Daniel was not a hero. He had never seen himself as one. He was just a simple man living in a crowded colony town where humans and aliens struggled to live side by side. The colony was built on the edge of Earth's great spaceport, where travelers from different worlds came and went every day. Some people accepted the aliens, but many still carried fear and anger toward them. Daniel tried to keep his head down, working long shifts at the loading docks, carrying crates heavier than his own body. At the end of the day, he would walk back to his small apartment, eat whatever simple food he had, and sleep. But one night changed everything. The air was cold. The streets were unusually quiet. Daniel walked home after another long day. His boots clicked against the wet pavement. Neon lights flickered from old signs, painting colors across the alley walls. He pulled his jacket tighter and hurried, hoping to reach his room before the night became colder. Then he heard it, a soft cry. It was not a human voice. It sounded frightened, desperate. Daniel stopped. He turned his head, scanning the narrow alleys. There it was again, a whimper, followed by a small gasp. He moved closer, following the sound. When he stepped into the alley, his heart tightened. A small alien child, no older than 7 by human looks, was cornered against the wall. Her skin was pale silver, her large black eyes wet with tears. She wore a thin cloth, torn at the edges. Around her stood 3 men-humans bigger, stronger, and filled with anger. "Go back where you came from," one of them growled. His voice was sharp, full of hate. "This is no place for your kind." The child shook her head, trembling. She tried to back away, but there was no space left. One of the men pulled out a knife, letting the blade glint under the faint credlish. Daniel froze. His heart raced. Every part of him wanted to walk away, to pretend he had seen nothing. These men were dangerous. Getting involved could mean pain or worse. But then he saw the alien child's eyes. They were wide, filled with fear, but also hope that maybe someone, anyone, would help her. Before he could think more, Daniel stepped forward. "Hey!" His voice echoed down the alley. "Leave the kid alone." Men turned their heads, surprised. One laughed. "What's this? Another alien lover?" Daniel's hands shook, but he forced himself to keep walking closer. "She's just a child." "Let her go," the man with the knife sneered. "Why should we listen to you?" Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't have an answer. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't even have a plan. But his legs kept moving, step by step, until he stood between the men and the child. He spread his arms wide, shielding her small body behind him. "You'll have to go through me first," Daniel said, his voice steady, though fear burned in his chest. For a moment, silence filled the alley. Then the first man lunged. The knife flashed, and pain shot through Daniel's side. He gasped but didn't move away. He stayed firm. Another stab, then another. The men struck again and again. Daniel felt the sharp pain of blades tearing into him, felt the warmth of blood soaking through his clothes. His vision blurred, but he did not step aside. He clenched his teeth, refusing to move. Behind him, the alien child sobbed, clutching the back of his torn jacket. Daniel's knees trembled. His body screamed for him to fall, but he pressed himself harder against the attackers, using his own body as a shield. Each stab drove him closer to the edge of collapse, but he thought only of the small figure behind him. "Run," he whispered to her, though his voice was weak. "When you get a chance. Run." But the child didn't move. Instead, she pressed her tiny hand against his back, as if trying to hold him up. She said something in her alien tongue, soft and full of meaning. Daniel didn't understand the words, but the sound carried gratitude, sorrow, and promise all at once. Finally, the men grew tired. One cursed under his breath. "Not worth it. Let's get out of here." They disappeared into the shadows, leaving Daniel on his knees. His breaths came ragged, his body heavy. He had taken 8 stabs. He knew he should not be alive. The child moved quickly, crouching in front of him. She pressed her glowing fingers to his wounds, but nothing changed. Tears streamed down her silver cheeks. She whispered more words, as if praying. Daniel smiled faintly. Okay? You're safe now." His vision darkened. The world tilted. The last thing he saw was the child's wide eyes. Staring at him with sorrow and determination, darkness swallowed him. When Daniel opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the alley. He was lying on a smooth bed that glowed softly from beneath. The air smelled strange, clean and sharp, unlike anything he knew. The walls were curved, covered in symbols that shone like stars. His wounds were gone. His chest rose and fell easily, as if nothing had happened. He blinked in confusion, trying to sit up. The room was not human. It was alien. And then he heard footsteps. The door opened, and figures stepped inside. Tall, armored, and carrying strange weapons. Their presence filled the room with power and silence, their eyes fixed on him. Daniel's breath caught. They were not doctors. They were soldiers, elite alien soldiers. Daniel sat up slowly, his hands gripping the glowing edge of the strange bed. His heart pounded hard in his chest. The last thing he remembered was falling to the ground in that dark alley, his body full of pain. Now, here he was, live, breathing, his body whole. The tall figures stood in silence, watching him. Their armor was silver and blue, polished like glass but harder than steel. Their helmets covered most of their faces, but their glowing eyes shone through. Each one carried a long weapon across the chest. Their presence was not just powerful, it was overwhelming. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to ask where he was, but the words caught in his throat. One of the soldiers stepped forward. He removed his helmet with slow, steady hands. His skin was pale, almost white, with faint lines that shimmered like light beneath the surface. His eyes were dark and deep, like the child's. "You are awake," the soldier said. His voice was calm, strong, but filled with weight. Daniel nodded slowly. Where am I?" The soldier glanced at the others, then answered, "You were in our care. You were dying. We saved you." Daniel touched his side where the knife had cut deep. There was no wound, not even a scar. He stared at the soldier, stunned. "I should be dead." The soldier tilted his head. "Yes, 8 blades. A human body cannot survive. But the child you saved called to us? She is of the commander's line. For her we came, and for her you were healed." The door slid open, smooth and soundless. A small figure rushed in the alien child. Daniel's eyes widened. She wore a clean robe now, glowing faintly under the room's light. Her silver skin reflected like moonlight, and her large black eyes shone with joy when she saw him. She ran forward, stopping beside the bed. She spoke quickly in her language, her voice high with relief. Then she pressed her hand against Daniel's arm, her tiny fingers cool and gentle. "She says thank you," the soldier translated. "She says you are her protector." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at the child, and for the first time since the alley, he smiled. "I'm glad you're safe." But before he could say more, heavy footsteps filled the corridor. The soldiers shifted, standing straighter. The door opened wider. More soldiers entered. These ones were larger, their armor darker, carrying symbols across their chests that glowed with authority. They carried themselves with a power that made the air feel heavier. Daniel's breath caught. These were not ordinary soldiers, they were elite. One of them stepped forward and spoke. Human Daniel, his voice rang like thunder in the chamber. "You are summoned by the commander. You will stand before him." Daniel's mouth went dry. "Commander!" The soldier nodded once. "The father of the child you saved. Leader of the clan. Guardian of our people." He pointed toward the child. "You've carried her life in your hands. Now, the commander wishes to see you with his own eyes." Daniel wanted to refuse. His chest filled with fear. I'm just a dock worker. I didn't do anything great. The soldier cut him off. "You stood against death. You took the wounds of your enemies, and yet you protected the child. That is honor." Daniel didn't know what to say. His legs trembled as he tried to stand. The child stayed beside him, her hands still holding his arm as if she didn't want him to go alone. Two elite soldiers moved closer. "We will escort you," one said firmly. The group walked through the alien ship's shining corridors. Everything felt otherworldly. The walls pulsed faintly with light, as if alive. Strange symbols ran across panels. Daniel's eyes darted from one detail to another, trying to take it all in. He had never stepped onto an alien vessel before. The child stayed at his side, her steps light and quick. Daniel felt comfort in her presence, though fear still coiled in his chest. Finally, the group entered a massive chamber. The ceiling rose high, lined with crystal-like structures glowing with soft blue light. At the far end of the chamber stood a tall throne, carved from dark stone, polished smooth, and glowing faintly along its edges, and seated upon it was the commander. He was enormous. Taller than any soldier Daniel had seen. His armor was deep black, edged in silver, with glowing marks across his chest and arms. His face was sharp and stern, his eyes dark and filled with power. His presence filled the entire room. The soldiers saluted and bowed deeply before him. Daniel froze, his heart hammering. The commander rose slowly from his throne. Each step shook the air with authority. He stopped before Daniel, his shadow falling over him. The child ran forward, speaking quickly in her language. She pointed at Daniel, her eyes shining. She repeated one word again and again. The commander listened in silence, his gaze fixed on Daniel. Then the commander spoke. His voice was deep, strong, and heavy with meaning. "Human, you bled for my daughter. You shielded her with your life. Among our people, such sacrifice is sacred. You are no longer an outsider." Daniel's breath hitched. I don't understand." The commander stepped closer. His eyes burned into Daniel's soul. Then he placed his massive hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You are now part of my family." The words shook Daniel like a storm. His knees weakened. He stared up at the commander, struggling to understand what had just been said. The soldiers around them stood in silence, their eyes fixed on Daniel. The child's face glowed with joy. She clung to her father's side, but kept her eyes on the human who had saved her. Daniel's life had changed in an instant. He had gone from being a simple dock worker to standing in the chamber of an alien commander, called family by a race that barely trusted humans. Daniel stood frozen, the commander's heavy hand still resting on his shoulder. The words echoed in his mind again and again. "You are now part of my family." He wanted to speak, to explain that he was just an ordinary human, a dock worker who had stumbled into an alley at the wrong time. But his voice refused to come. The commander's presence was too strong, too overwhelming. Around the chamber, dozens of alien soldiers stood silent, watching the scene with eyes full of respect. Finally, Daniel managed to whisper, "I don't deserve this." The commander tilted his head. "Do you think we give family easily?" His deep voice carried across the chamber. "Among my people, we do not offer such words unless they are earned. You gave your life for my child. That is worth more than titles, more than blood." The alien child stepped forward, her small silver hand tugging gently at Daniel's arm. She looked up at him with wide black eyes, her voice soft but firm. Though Daniel could not understand her language, he felt the weight of her words. The soldier beside him translated, "She says you are her protector. She says you must never leave her." Daniel's throat tightened. He had never been called something so important before. Protector, family, honor. All words that felt too heavy for him. A man who once thought his life was meaningless. But before he could answer, a sudden voice cut through the chamber. "This is dangerous." Another alien stepped forward, tall and proud, wearing armor different from the others. His eyes burned with suspicion. "Commander, with respect, this is a mistake. A human should not be given such honor. Their kind cannot be trusted." Murmurs rose from some of the soldiers. Not all of them agreed with the commander's choice. Daniel's heart sank. He understood enough. Some of them saw him as an intruder, not family. The commander raised his hand, and silence fell again. He looked at the doubting soldier. "Would you deny honor where it is earned?" The soldier bowed slightly but did not yield. Honor must be weighed with caution. If humans hear of this, they will demand more. They will believe they are equal to us. Sharp eyes landed on Daniel. This one is nothing. Just a worker from the docks? Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. He had no weapon, no power. But something inside him refused to let the insult break him. He stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart raced. "You're right," he said. "I am just a worker. I'm not strong like your soldiers. I don't know your customs. I don't even understand your language. But I didn't protect her because I wanted honor. I did it because she was a child and she needed help. Anyone with a heart should do the same." The chamber fell quiet. Even the doubting soldier paused, taken aback by Daniel's words. The commander's eyes softened for the first time. He placed his hand firmly on Daniel's shoulder again. "And that is why you are worthy." The alien child beamed, her small face glowing with joy. She repeated the word protector again, holding tightly to Daniel's hand. Still, Daniel's mind whirled. His life had been simple before. Work, eat, sleep. Now he stood among warriors and leaders of another world. Could he really accept this? Could he live as one of them? The commander must have seen the struggle in Daniel's eyes. "You have a choice, human," he said. "We will not force this bond upon you. You may return to your world, and your life will continue as before. Or," he paused, his gaze steady, "you may stay, become one of us, learn our ways. Stand as a bridge between our people and yours. The path will not be easy, but it will give meaning to your sacrifice." Daniel's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His thoughts raced. To go back meant safety, but also emptiness. To stay meant danger, responsibility, and a life he had never imagined. The child squeezed his hand again. Her eyes begged him not to leave. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something stir inside him. A purpose, a reason to live beyond himself. He looked at the commander and nodded slowly. "If my life means something to your people, then I'll carry it with honor." The commander's face broke into the faintest of smiles. He reached to his chest and removed a glowing emblem shaped like a star entwined with a circle. He placed it on Daniel's chest. The moment it touched him, the emblem lit up, binding itself to his clothing. Gasps filled the chamber. The soldiers bowed their heads in respect. "You are now guardian," the commander declared. "Protector of my child, and protector of the bond between our worlds." Daniel stood tall, though his heart still pounded. He was no longer just a dock worker. He had been given a new life, one filled with meaning. The doubting soldier lowered his eyes, though his jaw tightened. He said nothing more. The alien child smiled, leaning against Daniel's side. "Protector," she whispered again, this time in a broken but clear human word. Daniel's lips curved into a smile. That's right. As the chamber filled with solemn silence, Daniel knew his life had changed forever. He had walked home an ordinary man, but fate had carved a new path. He was no longer just Daniel the worker. He was Daniel the guardian. And beyond the glowing walls of the alien ship, among the stars, his true journey was only beginning.